When I started making music, I only had Ableton intro, so I was also limited to having only 8 tracks. And I was always feeling too limited. I always wanted to add more layers of vocals or of guitars or synthesizers or whatever the track needed. And I got some cool beats at the end of the day, but little did I know that with just a few techniques, I can squeeze in much more tracks into the Ableton intro. And today I've compiled 3 or maybe more cheats how to do that. So without further ado, let's jump into the Ableton and I'll show you everything step by step. Okay, so this is probably how your Ableton looks like when you first launch it. So by default, it has 2 MIDI tracks and 2 audio tracks and some returns and main channel. So first thing we want to do is quite important, and you can save it as a default template just to add a limiter to the main channel, just to protect your ears and protect your speakers if things get too loud, which can happen obviously. So okay, let's find the limiter. It will be in the audio effects limiter and just drag and drop it to the main channel and just set the threshold to around ceiling to -1 or -1.5 decibels just to be on the safe side, and we can forget about the main channel completely for now. So 4 MIDI channels for audio. Let's try to add a bit more. Let's hide this for a while and let's add more tracks. Insert audio track, insert MIDI track. You can use shortcuts, Command-Shift-T. And now we get this little nasty message. The number of tracks is limited to 8 in this version of Live. Okay, but that's why we're here, just to get around that little limitation. So let's delete all of them except for 1 MIDI track. And let's start thinking, what can we do to get more tracks? So first things first, if you're thinking about drums, you can probably see some other producers stacking separate layers of kicks, snare, and other percussions. But what we want to do is to use drum kits, which are here. If you go to drums, let's say 707 core kit, you can just drag and drop it to the MIDI channel. And therefore you have this little, as it's called, drum rack. Drum rack consists of some samples stacked in to these cells. So we can have up to 128 samples stacked in the drum rack, which is quite convenient. And we're going to be back to the drum rack at the end of the video to show you the very last and very cool trick. But first things first, we have bass drums, we have some snares, we have some hi-hats, toms, whatever, kicks, and we can always launch them like that. So this is our first layer. We're gonna set the tempo to, let's say, 110, and let's design some kind of simple drum, simple beat. Bass drum 1, 2, 3, 4, and then snare every second, and then close hi-hat 1, 2, 3. Duplicate that to make it double, and let's change the last one to be open hi-hat here. All right, yeah, let's listen to that now. Okay, so we have some simple drums done. Let's add more instruments. We want to have the bass, we want to have synth pads or keys and leads, whatever. We can have 4 instruments. Let's add them all now. So we can have 5 tracks. Well, let's see about that. So what we want to find is to use the drift synthesizer. We have some drift stuff hidden here. So 5th bass, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use the Darth Vader in the swimsuit. Let's add that. How does this sound? That's a lead sound, okay, bass like that. Go down an octave. Okay, perfect. Sandy balls, it's a nice bells if you go quite in higher octaves. Okay, now we want also to have double lush strings. Let's listen to that. Now we can combine these 4 instruments in one track. How to do that? What we're going to do is we're going to utilize something called instrument rack. The name says it all. It's a rack of instruments where you can put as many instruments as you want. And it is here. If you go to instrument, it is there, instrument rack. There it is. I already have that selected. But you can of course drag it as a new track. It looks like empty stuff here. But what we want to do, if we have already one instrument and we decided to add more, we can always kind of group it together with each other. So let's right click and says click group, or just press Command G or Control G. That's gonna make that little thing. If we open that, we see chains. So this is a chain with the bass. Let's listen to what happens now. Let's go down on octaves. Perfect, that's the bass. Now we want to add more instruments to the same instrument track. So all these instruments here, we can just drag and drop them. Let's close it like that. Okay, let's drag and drop it to the rack. Just here below, we have a second instrument. Go to the sandy balls. Let's drag it into. There we go, and double lush strings. let's drag them also. We can close it. We don't need to have that so big. We can drag it into the rack. So now we have 4 instruments in the rack. We can delete these MIDI. But what happens now? If you play any key, it plays 4 instruments at the same time. And that's not what we wanted to do. We want to separate them somehow. So I have a cool trick, because we will be utilizing these octave buttons to do that. And not only, if you don't have MIDI keyboard, that's no problem at all. We can get around that too. So they all play together. We want to have them separate. Of course, the instrument rack is a very handy thing. You can, of course, change the level of the sound. We can pan them left or right. And you can disable an instrument, or you can solo an instrument. So if you want to listen to only bass, let's have it here. So bass will be too high. Let's go down a couple octaves. Okay, what we want to do now is to press that key button here. That's going to open this little kind of long strip of the piano. You see piano on the top, going all the way from minus C2 to, let's say, F8. Okay, so let's utilize the whole keyboard except for the last C button. So we just want to drag this little strip here all the way to B2. B1 actually, yeah, there it is. So when we play, the bass will sound and will not play here. We want to have another instrument, let's say the Lite. So Lite will start from C2. So if we go 2 octaves up, it's going to be here, but we have it muted, so let's just solo the lead instrument. Okay, perfect. Let's do the same. Let's go up to the B. That's B3, okay? And let's do the same with the Sandy balls. Let's go from C4. Let's go 2 octaves up. So that's where we're going to start. It is a bit high in pitch, but we're going to fix that a little bit later, all the way to B5. And let's do the same with the last instrument. So we're dividing. You technically can add more instruments, but maybe that won't be optimal. So 4 or 5 maximum instruments, I found it to be the most optimal stuff. So we are very high in pitch now. We don't need to limit the upper register. So now, as you can see, we can play all the way. Let's jump 2 octaves below. We're on the bass section, 2 octaves higher. We are on the lead section, 2 octaves up. We are in the bell section, and here in the pad section. So we have 4 instruments, key instruments to the music, but they all in one track, like the instrument track. And then, as I mentioned, there are some problems with the octaves. So if you go down to the bell section, they are quite high. What can we do about it? We can open the instrument rack. Here we are, the balls. We can see this instrument here. So that's our drift synthesizer, super powerful one. And we can just go here to the transpose and let's say go down 2 octaves, so minus 24 semitones. And now we're no longer too high in pitch. That's perfect. The same we can do with the lush strings, which are a bit also high in the pitch. Let's go up 2 octaves. And also, if we don't want to do that, maybe the instrument looks a bit too complicated, we can do another simple trick. Let's go to the MIDI effects, and there's a pitch effect here. We could just drag and drop it just before the instrument here. And thanks to that, we can go also minus 12, minus 36 semitones. And let's listen to it now. So even though we're playing high up here on the keyboard, it is transposing it minus 36 semitones. So we have a nice chord here. And then we go 2 octaves lower. And we go 2 octaves lower. And 2 octaves lower. Everything works perfect. So we have 5 instruments and 2 tracks only. I'll program a simple beat here for you. You can of course double click and let's see where the bass is from C0. Let's do this. Not F sharp 0, it's C F0. Okay, now perfect. Let's actually bring it up an octave. So shift arrow up. Now let's go 2 octaves higher. Now we are in the lead sounds, okay? Make sure the clip is selected. Let's press this and let's record something quickly. Okay, perfect, that's recorded. We can quantize it if you want. We don't need to, of course. Okay, now let's add a little bit of some kind of pads. Let's go 4 octaves. We're in the pad section. Let's record some pads. Okay, there we have, perfect. And let's record some arpeggios with the sandy bows. Okay, let's record some arpeggios quickly. Okay, perfect. Let's quantize that as well. I'm not a very big fan of quantizing, but just for the purpose of this video, I don't want your ears to be hurting. Let's listen to it now. So we really have 4 instruments now. But what we hear that some instruments are a bit too loud or some are too quiet, we can balance it or mix it, and it's going to be useful also while you're mixing the song. So you can go back to the instrument rack here and just use these sliders here, or a bit more convenient option is just to open that little arrow here and we see all the mixer here and just play with the loudness of each particular instrument. Okay, perfect. We can also, of course, process these instruments separate. So if you want to have more control over the bass, we can, of course, drop compressor on it or whatever, like EQ. So let's go to the audio effects. Let's have the channel EQ. Let's drop it after the bass. We can just limit the lows or highs, whatever you want. We can just solo that and listen to only bass. Okay, let's drag in channel EQ on the Darth Vader in the swimsuit also. There's one here. And then we can also listen to only this one. Let's see the mids. Okay, now perfect. Now we have it slightly mixed. Okay, so that's one of the tricks to use instrument rack. Now, what if we want to have not only MIDI instruments, we want to have some audio instruments like guitars or vocals? We can, of course, have quite a few ways on how to do it. So let's start a new track. It's going to be an audio track. Make sure our input is set properly. I'm going to be using a guitar to do that. So by default, Ableton Live Intro doesn't have any amp simulators. So you can use saturation, you can use some effects just to shape the sound, of course. But if you want to have something that sounds like a proper guitar, you want to get something, download something from the internet. So there's a one really good, which is free, and it's called Guitar Rig 7. You can just check the link here on the top, how to download it, how to install it, and how does it work. But I have it already installed. Let's just find it. Guitar Rig 7, let's just slap it here onto the track. That's how it looks like. Let's check if everything's prepared. I'm going to get my guitar. I'm going to choose my amp preset. So let's go to guitars. And I think that high gain fuzz was quite okay. Okay, perfect, but it's a bit too loud, so let's turn it down here just for the sake of recording. So I'm going to record 3 guitars. You'll know why, because they'll sound pretty massive. Okay, let's start. Okay, that's guitar number 1. Let's duplicate the channel. We're going to keep all the settings as they are. Let's mute this guitar. Let's record from this guitar. Delete that. Let's record exactly the same, just once again. That'll do. And the third guitar, let's duplicate that as well. Delete that sample, record from the third one, and let's do exactly the same. Okay, perfect. Let's switch all these guitars on. Now, what we can do with these guitars, we can rename them and we can pan them to the right, left, and into the center. So let's rename this one quickly. Left, let's pan it to the left. There we go. We call this one right, and let's pan it to the right. And let's call this one center. You can quickly rename stuff by pressing Ctrl or Command R, super useful shortcut. Now let's listen to them all. That sounds massive. That's why I recorded 3 guitars. One goes to the left, one to the right, one in the center. So now we have 3 tracks and we want it to be only one just to save more space. And you can have unlimited amount of tracks and do it the same way. So we will be using a technique called resampling, which is basically playing all these sounds and recording all them 3 sounds on a separate track, which will be only one track. The only drawback is that you have to set up all the sound qualities, all the loudness and everything before recording to the track, because there's no undo. You can't re-record it later on once the samples are deleted. So how to do that? You can open another track, create a new audio track, Command T or Control T, and then change this to the parameter here called external input. That will take your sound from sound card or USB interface like microphone, guitar. We want to switch it to resampling mode, and we want to turn off any other instruments. We can just stop these clips. That also is a way to do. We can turn them back on. That's perfect. So we will record these 3 guitars in one set. So let's make these 2 side guitars a little bit more quiet. Let's play them for a bit. Okay, perfect. Now let's record it. So we press record here. Okay, perfect. Now it's looped in like 8 bars, which is perfect. Now we can get rid of these samples. It's no turning back once you delete them, they're just gone. So now we have only 1 sample. So let's do the maths. We have drums with 4 different elements. We have 4 different synths, that's 8 already, and we have 3 different guitars, 3 guitar tracks, so that's 11. I have 11 tracks, and it's only taking us 3 tracks. So that's technique number 2. Resampling. Now let's bring the third technique, and we will be using a drum rack to do that. Drum rack is something quite similar to instrument rack, only you can put multiple drum samples in it. As you've seen it here in the core set, in the drum set. That's the little grid here, that's the drum rack. So we want to find the drum rack. It will be here in instruments, just here, drum rack. Let's just drag it into the new track. It's a MIDI track, so we'll be using your MIDI keyboard or MIDI input, MIDI roll, piano roll, I mean, just to input the notes. So why we'll be using it for? We can drag in not only drum samples, we can drag in any other samples. It could be melodic samples. These guitars can be dragged in here. Let's just do that quickly. So now I have this guitar, I can play it in drum rack instead, and it will play just like that. But let's find some other samples. Let's delete that here. Maybe melodic, maybe some swooshes, maybe something. So let's go to find. Probably won't have these samples, but any other samples that you have will work. So we have this swell rusher. Let's put it in here. We have this short noise swell. Let's put it here. And then we have this one. Only it's an F, so it's probably not working with the melody, but we're going to do something about that in a moment. So let's drag it in here onto the F. Okay, so I found that if you transpose it -2 semitones, it works quite well. We want to maybe start the sample a little bit further. Let's fade in a bit here so it fades, and it fades out a bit as well. And then we have this key select C. Now we can program it here as well. So let's add a new clip, and we have just these 3 samples nicely laid out here. So we want to start with this noise here, let's say, like that. Let's duplicate it so make it longer. And then let's add this little rusher here together with this. The length doesn't really matter, it can be short like that, and we'll also play. Let's listen to all the instruments together. Let's launch the whole scene. This is all very loud, let's mix it slightly. Let's rename this so we know what it is. Yeah, obviously It's not the best beat I can ever do, and you probably can imagine that, but that's just to show you how we worked out. So we had 11 instruments, now we have 12, 13, 14 instruments, and 14 different samples, tracks that would normally be laid out in only 4. You have still 4 to go. And of course, you don't need to use all of these techniques, but sometimes they'll be that way. They're using 7 or 8 and you really want to squeeze a little bit more so you can pack them and compact them a little bit into smaller tracks of 5 or 6 or 7 or even more instruments or samples. Now, it is also super important to work much more efficiently and know how things work. And if you see me doing stuff that you don't really understand 100%, worry not. I've been there and I had to learn everything from scratch. It takes some time, but that sets apart Ableton from any other DAW. So if you want to learn how this session view works, it is super important and super cool. Watch this video next. Now, that's it from me for today. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys next video. Cheers.